Thank you so much, Peppa and Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, where we're picking up today is on page 37, first full paragraph. And so where we're diving in, and again, welcome. It's amazing that we have so many people here today that are counting days and some that are counting decades. So we're glad that all of you are here. And more about alcoholism, page 37. The thrust of what this chapter is about is the first step. So what we're looking to do is to have a first step experience, and we are going to laser beam focus on the part of our illness that makes alcoholism hopeless, which is to say the obsession of the mind. So that's where we're picking up right now. So page 37, first full paragraph. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. Now, what is the this? Well, this is our homeboy, our friend Jim, and he was out there living his life, doesn't want to drink, doesn't want to, wants to stay sober, needs to stay sober, and he gets a bad case of the suddenlies. So he's out there living his life, and he gets a thought, suddenly, whiskey couldn't hurt me if I only mixed it with milk. And so when it says, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. The plain insanity is a synonym for the obsession of the mind, which is to say, for those that are new, the thought that I have when I am as sober as I am today, but my illness is untreated. The sober thought that I have that takes me back again and again and again to that first drink. That is the obsession of the mind. So when we talk about the insanity of alcoholism, what we're not talking about is the crazy things that we do when we're out on a spree. It is that we do those crazy things out on a spree, but we can't stop ourselves from taking that first drink. The memory and the pain and the humiliation and the suffering of all the shenanigans, the debauchery, the degradation is not enough to keep me sober. That is the insanity of alcoholism. And again, this next sentence, how can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? So lack of proportion of the ability to think straight. That is a lengthy synonym for the obsession of the mind. This inability to see the world as it really is, and to see my alcoholism as it really is. So what is the truth? The truth is, once I take a drink, I'll set off that phenomenon of craving. I take that drink, and that drink takes me, and I need another. And that next drink demands a second, and that second insists on 4, and the fourth will not relent until I've had 8, and my 8th drink is screaming at me until I've had 16, and so on and so forth. You see, I start drinking, and I cannot control the amount that I take. And if I am able to see that clearly, I've got the ability to think straight. But the obsession of the mind means I think this time will be different. I think I'll just get it out of my system. I think my problem, I'm a Canadian, my problem was drinking with those Canadians. Rob and I were getting into some trouble, but we got some Americans, and this meeting's based out of the UK. They don't get into trouble there with their drinking. It'll be different. So that is that lack of proportion of the ability to think straight. I cannot see the consequences, the inevitable consequences that happen when I take that first drink. So that's what we're talking about. And it says, you may think this is an extreme case. The guy who put the whiskey in his milk. And to be fair, I didn't think it was extreme. But when I heard about it, I was judging the guy. I'm like, that is disgusting. I bet the milk curdled and ugh, that's so gross. And I'm like, ugh, what a loser. I'm judging the heck out of this guy. But here's the thing. I forgot how many alcoholic beverages have milk in them. Like Kahlua or like a White Russian. And I really think the takeaway is I don't like milk. I think that's the takeaway for me. That's why I'm judging the guy. And if I look at my own experience, man, I have mixed far worse with alcohol than milk. I have combined far worse than milk and whiskey. And so you may think it is an extreme case. And here's the reality. To us, it is not far-fetched. So our lived experience is that we have done something very similar. It says, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. Not this type of drinking, but this type of thinking where I am sober and I get a thought that tells me this time will be different. Nobody'll ever know. It'll be fine if I just have another glass of milk and a sandwich. It will be okay. That sort of thinking. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences. So there were times where we tried. We tried to play the tape to the end. We tried to think of the consequences. And we tried to think about what would happen. And the but is going to tell us that us trying to think through the drink, us trying to play the tape to the end, us trying to be aware of the consequences is not sufficient for an alcoholic. It says, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea went out. And this would, yes, welcome. We're on bottom of, or first 37, second paragraph. And this part of the paragraph, it would create this querulousness within me. I'm like, what is this on about? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And I would just skip over this paragraph. But this paragraph has important information for step one that my querulousness brain could not pick up on. And so let's break it down. When it says there was the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning. So what I've got two thoughts. And what they are is they are running a race. And I don't know about you, but I've heard in the rooms before, Paige, it's not a race. It's not a race. And that is not my experience. Here's my experience. And this is where I'm going to use all the props and the screen share and all the visuals, because this is a really, really visual sort of metaphor. And so what happens for me, and I'll use this one first. What happens for me is I put down the drink. So I set down the drink, I get sober, or I come to, and a race begins. And the race is beginning between two thoughts in my mind. The first thought is my sound reasoning. And that sound reasoning is I don't want to drink. I want to stay sober. I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I don't want the pain and the suffering and the consequences that always happen when I take that first drink. But parallel with my sound reasoning is that curious mental phenomena. And that is the obsession of the mind. So I put down a drink and a race begins. And it is those two thoughts that are running in parallel. And here's the thing. It does not matter how far ahead my sound reasoning gets. You see, if I burn it down to the ground really badly, if I burn it down to the ground and I am in pain and suffering and humiliation, man, my sound reasoning, that's going to get a head start. But you see, that obsession of the mind is always faster. And when I start to visualize this in this way, I begin to have a step one experience. That idea that it's not a matter of if I drink again, but when. And when this sort of visual began to click for me, I thought of the movie Tron. And I don't know about you. Anyone here ever seen the movie Tron? I haven't. But I just imagine those two little light motorcycles. We got one of them that's the obsession of the mind. And that one light motorcycle is, that insane idea. This time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And again, that sound reasoning is, I don't want to drink. I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. And I just imagine them racing like that because it was a real visceral sort of visualization for me. And so my friend Eileen got me some props. So this is a prop heavy visual sort of part of the book. And I will say they were fun to play with. And so imagine that this little motorcycle is my sane thought. This motorcycle is I want to stay sober. I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. And let's say I burnt it to the ground so badly. You know those days where you come to the morning after and you are appalled with yourself. Appalled with the things you've done, just fueled by shame and that inner, I'm never going to do this again. Man, I'm going to be out in front. I get a head start on this bad boy. But you see, this is the obsession of the mind. And this little motorcycle has turbo boosters. So I'm going to stay sober a little bit, running off my sound idea. I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. But it is inevitable that this motorcycle will come and win the race. I kind of talk about it. It's the difference between being on a race car bed up against a race car. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't matter how far ahead I put that race car bed. I don't got any motion. It doesn't propel forward. That race car is coming. And so when we say it's not a race, that's not true. It is a race. But I'm not racing you. I'm racing the obsession of the mind. I'm racing the inevitability of that first drink. That's what I'm racing. And so what do I got to do? How do I win? Because it's got like nitrous oxide, like it's going, it's driving fast, and there's nothing I've got to stop it. And I don't have a way to put rocket boosters on my sane thinking. What do I got to do? I've got to stop the race. And so what I need to do is I need our solution. And the solution that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual awakening. A spiritual experience, and I've got to find that before the obsession of the mind comes. That's what I've got to do. And it is a race. And so that tells me, so it's like, okay, girl, I don't know why girl, what do I got to do? What do I got to do is I've got to have that spiritual experience. So how do I get it? That is the purpose of the 12 steps. The purpose of the 12 steps is to get this race stopped, is to take me from that place of hopelessness, the inevitable relapse, to that place of spiritual awakening. And you see, that's what I mean, where this was something I would just gloss over. But this is giving me vital step one information. And when I see it is not a matter of if I drink again, but when. And the only way that I have to stop the race is a spiritual awakening. And the way that we have to get that in Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps, is a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. It makes it so simple. Here's what I've got to do. It doesn't make it easy. I don't want to do that. That does not sound like an appealing course of action for me. But that is what I've got to do. And it makes it so clear where I need to put my energy, and with the momentum that I need I need to go after this thing like it's a race, because it is. So when it says the insane idea won out, the insane idea will always win out. I will drink again. That's what it's saying. And the next day we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity how it could have happened. It is baffling to me, based on the consequences, based on the way that I hurt people. I don't know about most of you, but I have a feeling you didn't want to hurt the people you were hurting. I didn't want to hurt the people I was hurting. I didn't want to betray their trust. I didn't want to break their heart. I did not want to do it. And that is the power of the obsession of the mind. I don't want to do it, and I do it anyways. I don't want to hurt people, and I hurt them anyways. That's what I'm up against. The greatest love, the greatest need, the greatest desire, the greatest pain, the greatest suffering, none of that is sufficient to keep me sober. That's what I'm up against. And so it says, now this is the paragraph for the F-its. I'm not going to say what other people would call it, because I'm watching my profanity. But this is the F-it part of the book. And so it says, in some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk. So F it, F this, F you, F your steps, F your big book study, F your ODAAT, F it. If you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to get drunk too. I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get drunk? That sort of thinking, the F-its. And it says, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. A good way to see if I've ever had the deliberate, gone out deliberately to get drunk. Have I ever drank at somebody? That'll show them I will ruin my own life, I'll slam my head with a sledgehammer. That will teach them not to be so annoying, right? Like, that's how I'm going to burn my life to the ground. Ha ha ha, that'll show you. They don't even care, right? Have I done that? And have I been so wrapped up in those things? And it points to the idea that I need a way to be free of those things: nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. That I need some form of emotional sobriety. Because nervousness, anger, jealousy, depression, or the like, I'm just going to point out, we don't have the market cornered on those. Non-alcoholics have those too. But we need a way to be free from those. And again, emotional sobriety is the point. And emotional sobriety comes as the result of the spiritual awakening, that I grow and that I deepen. And again, how do I get a spiritual awakening? How do I get emotional sobriety? That is the purpose of the 12 steps. And it says, so have I ever drank at people? Have I drank because of these things? If you're going through what I was going through, you'd have to get drunk too. But it says, but even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. So that insanely insufficient justification is the obsession of the mind. And if you knew anyone who drank the way that we drank, and we saw them burn their life to the ground, and they said, man, I'm feeling all these consequences from my alcoholism. I need a drink to feel better. You'd be like, girl, are you out of your mind? But we can't see it. We can't see it. You know, and I talk about it like because talking about allergies, oftentimes we focus on the allergy, but the allergy isn't my real problem. My real problem is the obsession. So I got some food intolerances. I'm allergic to onions and peppers. Now, onions and peppers, they make me vomit, and the peppers create a burning sensation, so it's spicy vomiting. And if I told you that, and I said, hey, I'm going to go to Chipotle after the meeting, you'd be like, girl, are you out of your mind? But if onions and peppers destroyed my relationships, if onions and peppers ruined my goals and my hopes and my dreams and started to cause me to become somebody I didn't want to be, and I was like, I think I'm going to go to Chipotle, or I'm going to have a Sizzler, you'd be like, that's insane. And even if I was like, you don't understand, I'm full of fear and insecurity and worry and pain and suffering, you're like, yeah, but the Chipotle is only going to make it worse. And that's what we're talking about. So it says, we see now that when we begin to drink deliberately, F you, F this, F that, if you went through what I went through, you'd have to drink too. Instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. So we did not have the ability to think through the consequences during that period before we drank. That period of premeditation is the thought before we drink. And we had no ability, no capacity to think through the consequences. No ability, no capacity to play the tape to the end. No ability, no capacity to keep it green, to remember our last drunk. No capacity, no ability to phone a friend, to reach out. We had no power. And when it says of the terrific consequences, terrific is in the scope and the scale, not as in like, how terrific, I got a Nobel Peace Prize. Let me tell you, I didn't, not once did I get a Nobel Peace Prize on a bender. I did get a warrant or two, picked up one of those, you know. I mean, like a lady, pinkies up behind the dumpster, you know. So it was, yeah, I didn't find a cure for nothing. So it says, now what we're going to get into is, it's often people's favorite story from the chapter more about alcoholism. We just love this guy. And this is the Jaywalker. And actually, as I read it, I'll share with you, I made this little visual, recovered Jaywalker. Now, before I screen shared it, I should have been like, hey, heads up, my apologies. There's a little bit of a spoiler going on in the background. And so as we go through the story of this jaywalker, what we're going to see is his symptoms as they pertain to jaywalking, but how they mirror our symptoms of alcoholism. So as we go through, I'll point it out. So our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. Now, I realize jaywalking isn't as common a thing in the UK. It's not like illegal, but it's for those who cross the street not in a crosswalk. And back in the day when cars were getting on the road, a lot of the car lobbyists were like, hey, we got to put the responsibility on pedestrians. So the word jay was originally a term that meant like somebody that was uneducated. So it's like, oh, these stupid pedestrians, it's their fault they're going to get run over. So that's the etymological origin of the term jaywalker. It won't keep you sober, but if you got a boyfriend named Jay, your mom might insist on calling him Jonathan. That might be a consequence of that. So I'll throw that out there. Alrighty. So he gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. And so what does that say? When he runs in front of the cars, he gets a sense of ease and comfort. Just as I take a drink, I get a sense of ease and comfort. It says he enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. So he's getting that relief. He's getting that release. The consequences aren't piling up just yet. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. So you might think, well, that's a weird hobby and probably not the safest thing to do, but we're not going to really get on this guy's back about it. Luck then deserts him. And he is slightly injured several times in succession. So he's hurt a number of times quickly in a row. And have I had those experiences where I would go out and drink and I was experiencing consequences and consequences and consequences. And it says you would expect him, if he were normal, if he were non-alcoholic, or the equivalent of alcoholism for jaywalking, to cut it out. And if you would look at some of the consequences that you've had in your own life, if anything other than alcohol led to some of these consequences, lost jobs, lost opportunities, lost dignity, lost relationships, lost, like health, wellness, like that, insanity, would you have stopped? If an Earl Grey tea in the morning did for you, did to you what alcohol does to me, would you have stopped? Right? But what we're getting into is that idea that we cannot stop. It says presently he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. So the consequences are getting more serious. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. So imagine, you get some consequences, and you end up going to a detox or a rehab. And a week after getting out of detox, the emergency room, the psych ward, the rehab, a week later, you find yourself drinking again. Does that sound familiar? It says a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good. So that swearing off that is so, hallmark to us. That's it. I will never do it again. And he means it. But in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. And so when he says, I don't want to do it again, he has a thought before he runs out into traffic that tells him this time will be different. I just got to get it out of my system. I'm only going to dance around in the carpool lane or the bike lane or something like that. That obsession of the mind takes him back. And that is our real problem. So it says, but in a few weeks he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues. So years of going through the cycle, I'm never going to do it again, only to have the obsession of the mind say, this time will be different, and we do it again. And I'm never going to do it again. The obsession of the mind, this time will be different, and we do it again. And it's accompanied by his continual promises to be careful. So he's going to try to exhibit some control over the physical allergy, but it doesn't work. or to keep off the streets altogether. So trying to exhibit some power over the obsession of the mind, trying different things to stay sober, to not run out into traffic, to not take that first drink. And it doesn't work. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and he is held up to ridicule. So these are some heavy consequences. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. So he's trying everything and anything that he can to get off the street, to stay off the street. And it does not work. I can hold my experience up to that light. I did not try everything, but everything that I tried failed. Is that our experience? That I tried different ways and means to control it, and I couldn't do that, and I tried different ways and means to stay sober, and it didn't work. Finally, so it goes on to say, he tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum hoping to mend his ways. Long-term intensive treatment. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? And so that's the story of the jaywalker. And when we break it down in that way, doesn't that sound familiar? You may think, and this is another example of the book meeting us where we're at, where we're judging our friend Jim for putting the whiskey in the milk, where it's like, but hey, wait a minute, we've done stuff like that. And it's going to meet us where we're at here. You may think our illustration is too ridiculous. You might think this is ludicrous. And I don't know if Rob put in the chat, I had the screen share, so I wasn't able to see. No pressure to put this in the chat. But originally I hear, it's a rumor, that the story of the jaywalker was actually a story about a shoplifter. And they switched it over to a jaywalker. Oh, he did. He's on it. Why would I even doubt that? He's like clockwork. He's on this thing. So, but it's an interesting thing because I'll just share my experience. I've sponsored, I couldn't even tell you how many people. And oftentimes I will work with somebody who's newly sober and they start shoplifting. And here's what's interesting is what I found is what I need to treat. Is that the depth of what's going on for me is the spiritual malady. Again, that doesn't make me an alcoholic. There are human beings who have the spiritual malady that don't drink, that don't even shoplift. They're just difficult to be around because they're unhappy. But what I need is I'm searching for that ease and comfort. I'm searching for that relief. I'm searching for that release. I'm searching for that emotional sobriety because when I'm sober, I can't stand the way that I feel. And because I, at one point in my life, got relief from that first drink, my brain lies to me and tells me this time will be different. And so what I need to do is I need to treat that emptiness and that loneliness and that desperation at the depth of my soul. And again, how do I do that? That is done with the spiritual awakening. And how I get that is the 12 steps. And again, I'm pointing this out because we're talking about the hopelessness of alcoholism. We're talking about the inevitability of the first drink. But sometimes it's also important to talk to those who have been around a little while and the knuckles are white. And those who have been around a little while and the thoughts of I don't need to be here are starting to creep in and starting to run around the mind. And what I want to share is that we have a solution. Emotional sobriety is the point. And it is the point of the spiritual awakening. It is the point of the 12 steps. And that is what we treat. And if I treat that, I don't have the thought that tells me I have to go back to the first drink. And if I don't have that thought, I don't take that first drink. So I don't set off the allergy. So it goes on to say, you may think our illustration is too ridiculous. And most of us are like, no, that sounds about right. There's that fire truck is coming around the bend and there's nothing I can do to stop it. It says, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. So for those that are about my age and younger, a wringer, what that is back in the day before you had washers and dryers, a wringer would take the wet laundry and like just wring it out, and it would like compress it so it would squish out all the water so it would dry quicker. And if for those that are older than me, you might be familiar with putting washing through the wringer and catching your finger in that, and oh boy, that stung. And so it's like, for those who've been through that, where we feel that alcoholism has taken us and just wrung us out everything good, all the joy of life, it's saying, no, that sounds like me. We have to admit, if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. We went through exactly that. It says, however intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? So that strangely insane, again, is pointing to the obsession of the mind. And here's the thing, alcoholics, we tend to not be dummies. We tend to be intelligent, creative, hardworking. I mean, if you think about the alcoholics in your life, they're some of the most incredible people. We are not dumb, but the intelligence, the willpower, all of my effort, all of my wonderful qualities that I have in all other areas of my life have no power to keep me sober. And a lot of times I've heard people say, there's no one too stupid to get this thing, but there are people that are too smart. And I'll tell you something, that's actually not my experience. I don't think anyone is too dumb to get this thing, and I don't think anyone is actually too smart to get this thing. But I do think there are people who think that they're too smart. I'm just going to throw that out there, and so what it's trying to say is like, this is available to all of us. But I have to have that experience where I see what I've got, the defenses that I've got, the pain, the suffering, my willpower, my intellect, my morals, my values, all of that is insufficient to keep me sober. And we're not trying to convince you, we're trying to give you the information of this is what alcoholism is. Hold that experience up to the light of your experience. And if you have tried things to get sober and found that you could not, you have this thing. And that's actually good news, because it means if you're here today and you're counting days, it means if you're here today and you're coming back from a relapse, it means if you're here today and you feel like you're the worst person that ever lived and there's got to be something wrong with you because you can't stay sober, what you have is alcoholism. That's what it is. It's not that you're broken. It's not that you're bad. It's not that you don't want it hard enough. And we have a solution for alcoholism. We have an answer for this thing. We do got to go. We got to hustle. We got to go after it because it's a race. But that's what's wrong. Because I thought there was something else just broken about who I was. And that's the message. That we got a solution. We got an answer. And unfortunately, it's going to take work that none of us wants to do. Spoilers, but we do got an answer. And I love, because the book again is going to meet us where we are at. So actually, hold on. It says it's strong language that's strangely insane, but isn't it true? Isn't it true that this is our experience? That I have to stay sober, I need to stay sober, I want to stay sober, a day, a week, a month, 3 months, 4 months, a year or so down the line, I find myself doing it again. Yes, that's our experience. And I love this. So this is, again, another example of the book meeting us where we're at. The book meeting me in my denial, my obstinacy, my stubbornness, my querulousness, my just unreasonableness. It's got me stuck, meeting me there. And it's going to take me where I need to go. So some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply, right? Right? It doesn't apply to me. I'm different. I mean, listen, I came to AA with a whole lot of andas and yeah buts. I'm an alcoholic anda. Yeah, but I'm young. Yeah, but he's worse than me. I came with all of those. So I'm like, what you say is, yeah, that's true, but it doesn't fully apply. It says we admit we have some of these symptoms. I mean, there's two main symptoms that we are focusing on. The obsession of the mind, and that's what we are laser beam focusing on, and the allergy of the body. So we have some of the two symptoms. Yikes. Yes, we admit that we have some of the symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. I have self-knowledge. I'm not as bad as you. There's no way I'm going to go and end up where you end up, right? I won't ask for a show of hands, but I think many of us have felt that way. And it goes on to say, we have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. And if you're wondering, thanks for the information is as a polite go F yourself as you're going to get. That's, if you just need me to translate, that's what that means. Thanks for the information. Go F off. And so the book is going to meet us there, where it's like, I'm not as bad as you. And I would do this thing, and I know it's something that you guys would absolutely never do. I would do it though. It's called judging the speaker. And I would listen to somebody like me, and I'd think, whoa, I'm not as bad as her. Look at her. She's messed up. She brought toy motorcycles to a big book study. She's out of her mind. I'm not as bad as her. And then I'd see, a delightful, distinguished fella, probably George, and I'd think, I'm way worse than George. He looks like he's got it together. You know what I mean? And I would look for all the ways I was different, all the ways I didn't belong. And that's why I'm so big on talking about the symptoms of alcoholism, which is to say, the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. Because those two symptoms made it as clear as it needed to be for somebody of my type. They pegged me between the eyes. They cut through all the delusion, all the denial, all the way that I was different, my andas, my yeah buts, and it's like, yeah, but what happens when you drink, and what happens when you try to stay sober? And it's like, man, I can't drink and I can't stay sober. And that allowed me to have that step one experience, which allowed me to go after this thing with the necessity that somebody of my type needs to. And when I say my type, I don't mean anything extra special. I just mean a run-of-the-mill alcoholic. And when I got here, I saw the phrase potential alcoholic, and I thought that was me. I'm just a potential alcoholic. I've got little baby alcoholism, and I just need to do Diet Alcoholics Anonymous. Give me the one with the sucralose. That's what I'm here for, turns out I just got alcoholism. But I will say, only time in my life I ever thought I had potential was when I was like potential alcoholic. So thanks for the information. Politely not interested. And it says that may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate, because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. So what makes an alcoholic? Again, when we talk about able to stop or moderate, so the ability to stop means, and stay stopped, because if you're like me, I'll grab a hold of, I was able to stop for 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years. And I'll be honest, I'm so glad you're here, but if you're hanging out with me, you probably don't have a whole lot of other options. We've probably run out of those. I love you. But yeah. So so when it says, are able to stop, the people that are able to stop and stay stopped on a permanent basis do not have the obsession of the mind. Have I been able to stop permanently? And when it says those that are able to moderate, what they're talking about is those who do not have the allergy. So they were drinking a little heavy, and they're now able to tone it down and drink, I'm going to assume like a lady, even though I have no idea what that looks like. I bet they have dry pants every weekend. It's wild. Can't relate. But so when we talk about those two symptoms, and when we talk about brains and bodies have not been damaged. When we talk about of the mind, of the brain, we are focusing on the obsession of the mind, which again, I know I'm being redundant. I just want to make it very clear. The obsession of the mind is the thought that I have when I am sober that takes me back to the first drink. And when it talks about our bodies being damaged, that is what happens once I take the drink. The allergy takes me and I need more. And it says, but the actual or potential, the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. Now, this is in italics. Now, we've done some work and some research, and it turns out that italics, by the time the 1930s came around, italics didn't actually cost extra at this point in history. They did previously to the 1930s when they had to physically go in and change it. It didn't cost extra, but that sort of myth that it cost extra which was one that I shared and I spoke about. Why would that carry traction? One is because if it's in italics, it's unimportant. If it is in italics, it is important. And we're just trying to reemphasize how important it is. So I cannot stay sober on self-knowledge. What is self-knowledge? Knowing that I'm an alcoholic. I can't stay sober on that. And knowing that I've got the allergy of the body, I can't stay sober on that. Which means that knowing that there will never be a time that I can ever safely drink again, I can't stay sober on that. Knowing that I have the obsession of the mind, which is that I will drink again, I can't stay sober and I'm going to drink again. Knowing what the solution is. Can't stay sober on what the solution is. Knowing the program of action. Knowing the book. That cannot keep me sober. The only thing that can keep me sober is an experience. That spiritual experience that happens is the result of the work, the result of the 12 steps. That is what keeps me sober. So I can know myself, I can know alcoholism, I can know the book, I can know the history of the printing press, because apparently that's helpful for this part of the book, and none of that can keep me sober. I can have little motorcycles that I bring out to explain the Tron-based metaphor that my brain has concocted. Cannot keep me sober. And they do run on the floor on their own if you give them a little push. It's delightful. But I can't stay sober on my own, even if you give me a little push. Doesn't work. So it says, this is a point we wish to emphasize, to re-emphasize, to smash home to our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed out of bitter experience. So we're not saying like, hey, just so you know, can't stay sober on self-knowledge. No, it's saying self-knowledge can't keep us sober. It's not enough. And we want to reiterate that and smash it home. And you can almost hear the emphasis with which they are sharing. And it's not a theory. It is their experience, because as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience, our own bitter experience at the inability that we have to stay sober on our own power, but also the experience of working with alcoholics and seeing that window close and the insane idea win the race and they drink again. That's what we're saying. So this is not a theory. So again, it says, let us take another illustration. And next week, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our guy, Fred, and we're going to go through his cycle and we're going to see what happened to him. But what we're trying to emphasize is that this is a race. If I'm sober today, the race has begun. And I've got to get to the solution as quickly as I can before the obsession of the mind inevitably comes and gets me. So with that, 3 minutes left. I will toss it over to Peppa. Thank you so much.